Hey, welcome back to Crimes and Closets. This is Christy in my closet in St. Louis.
This is Beth in my closet in North Carolina.
Yo, what's going on?
Yo, I am back in the NC.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, last one you were gone.
I was.
Good trip. Good trip.
Good trip. Yep. All the
Awesome.
things, all the family things. Saw a baby,
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Cool.
Yes, and we've had a big week.
Yeah, the world.
Well, the country, but yes.
Well, yeah, the country. Really the world, because the world was looking at us a little funny. And now they're kind of like, okay.
Yep. So we have a new administration that just swore in yesterday or a couple days ago.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and fantastic memes that are going on around Bernie Sanders.
I can't stop. I can't stop. I just texted. I was late to recording because I sat down to review everything and started looking at Bernie Sanders memes. And so I lost track of time, and here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are with a phone full of Bernie memes.
I know. I kept getting like random ones today, and then finally, just before actually you texted, I had gotten, I don't know, Kelly sent me the Facebook like link to like just a whole scrolling of them. And I was just scrolling through like 35 of them.
Bernie's been nowhere for like a year or more.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden it's like, I'm back. And it's fabulous. I'm here for it.
It is ridiculous. I mean, the way people have like cut him out and like put him like seamlessly into
on the Game of Thrones, like throne, Iron Throne. That was a good one. In the Bird Box.
Oh, I don't think I saw that one.
Boat. All good. They're funny.
I think he was in a train on one, and this one was like one of those gifts. So it was like it was moving. It was like the train was moving, and Emery like texted it and was like, "I'm on my way." He texted that. Like, oh, you in the train with Bernie? Don't have train.
Could you ask him if you can see his mittens?
Try on those mittens, please.
And who made them for him? Who knitted them? I'd like to know.
Exactly. Exactly. Somebody.
All right, we're gonna have to post a meme now.
I know. We totally should. Should just post it tonight after we're done chatting.
Oh, it won't be relevant.
Oh, true.
Stay tuned to our social media for our favorite Bernie memes.
All right. Awesome. Sweet.
Bernie mitten memes.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we could get the laughter out of the way right now because this is going to be a rough one.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
As opposed to our normal spot of tease.
Yes. Compared to all the funny crimes we've done in the past.
Hilarious.
This one is going to be hard.
Okay.
So are you ready? You ready for me to
I'm ready.
Get right into it? Okay.
I don't know, but okay.
Okay. This is the story of Angie Housman, which I know you know.
I do know Angie Housman.
I didn't for some reason. Like I was telling you right before we started, I don't know why I hadn't heard of this one before, but it's a doozy for sure. And it was a suggestion from a listener here in St. Louis, Carolyn. So
hello, Carolyn.
Yes. Hello. And thank you for the suggestion. I mean, thank you, but not so much.
No, thank you.
No, I'm kidding. It was a good one for us to do, I think. So let's get into it. So Angie Housman, I think it was Angie Marie Housman, was born on February 18th, 1984. Her parents were Diane Housman and Angelo DeAndrea. So Angelo is her birth father, but he's not in her life at all. I don't know why. He wanted to be part of her life, but for reasons that I don't know, Diane's parents wanted him to stay away from what I've read. And I actually had a hard time finding out who he was, but there was like an article in like 2019 where it's like Angie Housman's father finally breaks his silence and like he like spoke to the news at that point. But he said that he had sent presents and money to support her for 9 years with hopes of seeing her again one day. But again, I don't know what the reasons were why he was kept from her. I don't know. So
something probably went down.
yeah, exactly. And I don't know their ages. I don't know if they were young. I don't know. I don't know. There's not much out there for it. So I do know that she lived in St. Anne, Missouri. So this is a local kind of case for me with her mom, Diane Bone, and her stepfather, Ron Bone. And she had been with them, like she had been with Ron ever since she was just under 2. I think Ron said it was like a year and 10 months was when he met her for the first time.
What a name, though.
Ron
Bone.
Mm-hmm. I know.
I
Every
like
time
he
I
has
heard
a real just a choice of a few professions with a name like that,
Yeah.
Ron Bone.
Yeah, and he was at the time of this case, he was like a appliance mechanic, I think, at Sears.
Oh yeah, no, that doesn't work.
And now he's a truck driver of sorts. I can't remember. Better. Yeah. So, she had lived with him. Like that was basically the, only dad she really knew. She had been with him her whole life. And she had a 2-year-old brother, Ronnie Jr. So we've got another Ron Bone Jr. So Angie's family and friends and teachers would describe her as outgoing. She loved people and always had a smile on her face. She was always looking to make a new friend. People close to her said that one of her favorite things to say was, "Hi, my name is Angie. Are you my friend?"
Aww.
I think that's super cute. She was ambitious and at a young age had the idea that one day she would become a nurse's aide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I don't even know. I mean, I don't know that. Well, I guess my 10-year-old would think of something like that, but I don't know if most would be thinking of that, that far
Definitely
ahead.
not me at 10.
Yeah. No. Oh, heck no. Mm-mm. So, the neighborhood that she lived in St. Anne, neighbors have described as a safe neighborhood, and they would often see Angie outside playing or riding her bike around. In 1993, Angie was a 4th grade student and went to, I think you pronounce this, Booter Elementary School in St. Anne. And all of this is I was just about to get to that.
I was going to say, how far away is it from you?
Yeah, that's my next statement was going to say all of this is about 30 minutes from where I live. So a little close to home here.
Yeah.
She would take the bus home from school and get dropped off about a half of a block away from her house, and it was approximately 9 houses from hers. On November 18th, 1993, it was just an ordinary day. She went to school, and the bus dropped her off at her bus stop on the corner of St. Gregory Lane and Wright Avenue at around 4 p.m. And it would typically take Angie about 5 minutes to walk home from the bus stop, barring, seeing a friend that she might stop and be like, "Hey, you want to play when I drop all my stuff off or whatever?"
I'm Angie. Am I your friend?
Yeah. Are you my friend? Do you want to play? So after about 30 minutes, her family got a little bit concerned because it was not quite like her to not come right home. And then they reported her missing within a couple of hours of not returning home. And the police began to search immediately. And they brought a police dog out, and the dog tracked her scent along Wright Avenue, but lost her scent about halfway to her house. And at the time, which this seemed like such a weird statement to make, the investigators said they weren't sure if the wind blew the scent away or if she had gotten into a car at that point. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody refer to scents being blown away. Have you? I mean,
never.
Yeah.
No,
so I feel like it was a really weird statement to make, but I don't know. Maybe they just didn't know enough about it back then. I don't know. But anyway.
Or it was a blizzard or like a hurricane weather.
I don't think so. Not in November here.
Right.
Like it would be chilly, but it wouldn't necessarily be like, I mean, clearly I don't know what it was like but now in November it's not like even close to being blizzardy. So anyway, so they just seemed like she had just vanished right at that spot because they just lost the scent.
Oh my gosh, that's so haunting.
Yeah, it's like Leah Hickman's scent just vanished in this one spot. Like,
Yes,
honestly.
so
So,
true.
yeah, such a weird thing. So, police, family, and the FBI scoured the area for days. Did that just sound like New York? Because right after I said it, for days.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It just hit me and I had to stop. So, they scoured the area for days and talked to everyone that they could about Angie. They would get calls with leads and track down each one that came in. And one of the news reports that I watched said that they were at sometimes even hindered by false ones because they would get any call that came in, they would follow it and spend time following up with it, and then it would just like either turn out to be nothing or it would just been like something fake, something that somebody called and made something up, which please don't do that, people. Like that's just
Really, it really is like just such a bad citizen and karma.
yeah, it's just and
Karma,
it's
guys.
unnecessary. It's ridiculous.
Such a waste of time.
Yeah. Police even had a psychic call in and tell them that she would be found in the Bush Wildlife Preserve, but clearly most people don't take those kinds of things very seriously. I'm sure there are people that do, but I would imagine that they don't take it all too seriously. After days and days of following leads, everyone was growing frustrated. And 9 days later, on November 27th, 1993, Angie's body was found by deer hunters in a remote area of the Bush Wildlife Preserve. So, should have taken it.
Arrest the psychic.
Yeah, right. Or should have taken her a little bit more seriously. A psychic also, I read somewhere, said that the killer would never be found. But, I mean, she was kind of close. Not never, but it was a long time. So she was found in this wildlife preserve, which is about a 7,000 acre piece of land, and it's got like greenways that go around it. And apparently at this time, I don't know if it's still the case now, but they allowed bow hunting on those grounds. So that's why they were going in. And I will say now, the next couple minutes are going to be really hard to hear. So as I describe how Angie was found. So if you are a little squeamish about and sensitive about things that happen to children, you might want to skip ahead just a couple minutes. So are you ready, Beth?
I'm ready. I can't skip ahead, sadly.
I know you can't.
Mm.
Angie was found handcuffed to a tree naked. Her head was basically duct taped to the tree, and there was duct tape covering her eyes and her mouth. Her nose was pretty much the only thing that was not covered in tape. She had lacerations to her thigh and wrists, and they said that they weren't deep enough to kill her. Like they were almost like slit wrists, and that maybe somebody was trying to kill her, but then it was like, oh no, and they didn't go deep enough and because they changed their mind. But she had these lacerations on her wrist and a thigh. She was violently sexually assaulted and tortured. There were pieces of torn underwear in a Dollar Tree bag close by, and a piece of the torn underwear was also found in her mouth that was being used as a gag. Her backpack was close by, and also all of the clothes that she had been wearing that day were there, and they were just neatly folded in the area. And whoever had taken her had left her there alive. Some of the lacerations that they found were due to her struggling extensively to free herself. And when she was found, she was malnourished, dehydrated, and tortured. The autopsy reports said that she had been severely beaten for days. Her cause of death was determined to be hypothermia because the night before she was found, it was below 0. So this awful human being tortured her, sexually assaulted her, and left her there alive. I can't even imagine what was going through her head as she was there. You know, she can't see anything because she's got tape over her eyes. She's bound. Awful. They had no idea who could have done this to her and no solid leads or suspects. I mean, clearly they look at the usuals, the stepdad. They even polygraphed him, and the press conference that I watched, which
they
was
polygraphed
like,
the stepdad.
They did.
Ron Bone.
Yes, Ron Bone. And they in the press conference that I watched, it was stated that they couldn't rule him out completely, but they don't have any evidence that he was linked to it. But they've just not, I don't know if they have in the last couple of years, but I know at that time when they did finally arrest somebody, they said that they still couldn't rule that he was out, that he was involved. I don't think he was, based on everything that I've read and like seen. I don't think he was, but that's just what was stated. Investigators involved in the case never gave up on it. They would constantly bring it back to the surface and do more testing throughout the years. DNA testing back then clearly wasn't, that great. It was just becoming a thing. So they could only do so much. But as things advanced, they would take, another look at the case and then open it back up.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine these poor police officers who were so haunted, I bet, by this case that they just could not okay, it's been a year, let's do something else. Okay, it's been another couple years, let's do something else, like tirelessly still
right,
probably dreaming about this poor girl.
And from what I can remember, it's like the same two that just kept going at it and just and not wanting to give up on it. And I mean, thankfully they didn't. So they tested the DNA evidence again, or they tested the evidence again in 2004, but nothing came of that. And then in that same press conference that I mentioned earlier, prosecutor Tim Lomar had made a statement that I hadn't known or even thought of prior to this. But he was saying that they had like many pieces of evidence in this case from the scene. But as they would test one, it would almost make it unusable to be tested again.
Right. It's like they're wasting it or something.
Right. So you would use like, oh, well, there was that, piece of DNA and we can't test it again. We've used it now. And so like that would just like kind of get put in a box. And so they had multiple items, but they didn't want to just keep testing it and test like everything. Because then, when things advanced again, they would have nothing left. So they were just vigilant in determining when they should test certain items. So, and also apparently back in the day, if an article of clothing had dye in it, the dye acted as an inhibitor during lab testing. So you couldn't produce accurate results and it would kind of mess with the results. So, and her underwear, and they knew this at the time, had like a pink dye to it. So you couldn't really test it because they knew it was just going to come back inconclusive anyway, because that dye was going to inhibit the test results. So in 2013, they formed another task force to continue working on Angie's case. But again, nothing really came of it then. But in 2017, there was a huge breakthrough in technology. And now they were able to test items and the dye would not affect the results. So it's just like, again, they're like vigilance on deciding when to test things in this, like they just waited. Like it must have been horrible to wait that long, but just to keep waiting and not testing that evidence so that it wouldn't get ruined. So, I'm sorry. In 2019, they then decided to take one more crack at the test. So that advancement happened in 2017, but they didn't jump right back into testing it. 2019, they were getting ready to send most of the evidence off to the FBI labs because they have way more things that they can do than the local labs. But they decided, okay, let's just take one more crack at it locally first before we send all this out. So they retested that one piece of torn underwear. And this particular testing came up with a hit in the CODIS system. And in June of 2019, they announced that they had a suspect. The DNA was matched with 61-year-old Earl Webster Cox, who was a veteran who was at the time currently in federal custody in North Carolina.
Oh,
weird.
Wait, at the time of the crime or at the time that the DNA matched?
At the time that the DNA matched, he was in federal custody in North Carolina. So we've got this like Missouri, North Carolina.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This case was meant to be.
Yes, it was.
For us to cover, not to happen. Just
right. Yes. Clarify. When we come back from the break, I'll give you just a little bit more details about Earl Cox.
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm Jessica, and together we co-host the podcast Three Spooked Girls.
If you love the paranormal
or murder,
join us on Mondays for full-length episodes where we discuss our favorite paranormal stories and true crime cases.
And join us again on Thursdays for our mini-sodes called Stabby Snippets, where we tell you all about true crimes happening in the news.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, wherever the hell else you listen to your pods at. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by using the handle @3spookedgirls.
Come and hang out with us and get your spooky on while we scare the hell out of you.
The Three Spooked Girls.
Okay, so our suspect, Earl Cox, in 2019 is in federal prison in North Carolina, but let's get a little back story to him. In 1975, Earl joined the Air Force and he served our great country. However, he was dishonorably discharged in 1982 after being found guilty of several sexual offenses against 4 juveniles in Germany.
Oh,
So this man
girl.
starting out this trend already. He was court-martialed and sentenced to 8 years in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. Only after 3 years, in 1985, he was paroled and released. And in 1988, he transferred his federal parole to the state of Missouri, where he took up residence in Breckenridge Hills, Missouri, which is just about a quarter of a mile from the abduction site.
3 years he served for molesting or abusing 4 children.
Yes. He was sentenced to 8, but then got paroled after 3.
I mean, sentenced to 8?
Mm-hmm. I know. Well, yeah, just wait. In 1989, he was a suspect in the sexual abuse of 2 girls in Overland, Missouri, and all of this is kind of in the same general area of the state. He was charged in these cases, but the charges were later dropped. But due to being charged, it was a violation of his parole, and his parole was revoked, and he was sent back to Leavenworth. But in 1992, he was then again released, and he moved back to Missouri using some of his relatives' addresses, because I think his sister lived pretty close to the school that Angie went to. And he ended up moving into his own place in Ferguson, which also is probably about 5 miles away from St. Anne. But he did not live there anymore. His family still lived close to where Angie lived, but he lived a little bit further away. So now where he released in 1992 and lives in Missouri again. So 1993, when Angie's abducted, he's clearly in the area when all this happened. But nobody caught him at that time. So in 1997, Earl becomes involved with a child pornography network based in Colorado known as the Brotherhood. They apparently facilitate international distribution of child porn. I did not look them up because I have no interest in knowing anything about them.
No. You do not need that on your computers.
Nope. Mm-mm. Yeah, I'm good. In November 2002, he sent some emails to what he thought was a 14-year-old girl that were very sexually explicit. But it turns out that this was an FBI agent. And he was then arrested early 2003. And when they did a search of his computer, they found 45,000 images and videos of child porn, including of children as young as 3 years old.
No.
Just gross. Disgusting. This is the most disgusting man I've ever read about, I feel like. I don't think I've ever read about anybody more gross than this guy. He was found guilty of a few charges and sentenced to 120 months in federal prison. 10 years. 10 years for all of that. And he has prior history, and you're still only giving him 10 years.
With the exact same offense.
Right. Exactly. Clearly, the man is deranged.
He's a pedophile.
He was supposed to be released in 2011, but multiple doctors, thankfully, testified that he had no empathy for his victims and he would have trouble refraining from this behavior in the future. And he was deemed a sexually dangerous person in order to be criminally confined under the Adam Walsh Act, which allows authorities to keep a convict past their sentence if a panel deems the person is likely to reoffend. And thankfully, they did deem him likely to reoffend. He became a patient in Butner Medium Security Facility in North Carolina, and that's
I
about.
know someone who works at Butner right now.
Is that the old neighbor?
Yes.
The one who I bought a house from?
Yes, you lived in his house.
I was what I mean, I don't know. I didn't think, but I was like, I always wonder where he works. But
Yes.
yeah. And it says it's like 25 miles from you guys.
Yeah,
Essentially.
it's not far at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where he was. He was, right there.
Hmm.
And he was there when they tested and found his DNA along with Angie's on her underwear. And so then they extradited him back to Missouri to face the charges in Angie's case. And when questioned about what happened, he said that he was having trouble with his car that afternoon, and so he happened to pull over to check it out. So it is assumed that he was out like visiting his family or, somewhere near his family. When he spotted the bus stop to let Angie out, and moments later he saw Angie walking down the street. He said initially that Angie approached him, which, knowing how outgoing she is, like, "Hi, I'm Angie. Are you my friend?"
Right.
Could have been possible. Entirely possible. However, when he was pressed further, that's not what happened. He asked her if she was hungry, and she said she was, and so she got in his car.
I was going to say, she probably got the creep factor from him a little bit.
Well, yeah, you'd think, but
I bet she did, but she was a little girl, and it's the 90s.
Exactly.
Early 90s.
Mm-hmm. So she got in his car, and they went to Burger King, and then just drove around, and they were in the car for, potentially hours. And eventually he took her back to his home, which was a mobile home, apparently. And he held her there for days while he brutally sexually assaulted her and tortured her.
And he admitted to all of this.
He did admit to all of this. And he, at the time, had a live-in girlfriend. Boggled my mind when I first read that how you could hide a, 9-year-old girl in your.
You cannot.
Mobile. Yeah. Well, apparently, he forbid her from going into the back room of the house, and she barely spoke English at the time. I don't know where she was from, and she was afraid of him, so she just said she listened to him. And I think it was still that same press conference I watched. I don't know. It was like a 40-minute press conference of when they figured this whole case out. They said they talked to her so many different times that they do believe that she didn't know that Angie was in the home, so they don't think she had anything to do with it. But he doesn't not know how long he had her in the house and at what point he brought her to the Bush Wildlife Preserve, because he has some gaps in his memory because he's had 2 strokes. So there's still some spotty areas in his confession that he just doesn't remember because of those strokes. He initially entered a not guilty plea in 2019. However, the prosecutor wanted to make sure that they nailed him for this. And he ended up entering a plea of guilty just to avoid the death penalty, because they put that on the table to get his confession, essentially, because they wanted to hear him say what he did. And they knew that there's no guarantee. I mean, they had a lot of evidence, but with a jury, there's no guarantee. So they figured if they can get him to just confess to it, then let's just do it. So he did not have a jury trial, and he was sentenced to life without parole on August 20th, 2020. So he was just sentenced not too long ago.
And during COVID too.
Yeah, during Rona. So, but, and I almost said this earlier about the whole psychic, about him never being found, because unfortunately, Angie's mom, Diane, died in November of 2016.
I was going to ask that.
From cancer. And so as far as her mom is concerned, he was never, so
she knows.
In a way, she knows, I guess. Yeah. But in a way, the psychic was right. Like, she was never going to have that closure before she died. So, but Ron actually said in one of the interviews that she officially died from cancer in 2016, but she truly died years before that, right after Angie died, because she just wasn't the same. She was, depressed.
Not.
She would close curtains because she couldn't stand to see the bus stop or the street. She would cry if she saw a bus, because they stayed there for a certain amount of time after Angie disappeared. he said the police told them to stay there, but I don't know why they would have them do that. But I guess they moved out of that house in 1999. So still, they stayed for 6 years. And Angie also now has another brother, Richie, who was born almost 10 years after her death. So he never got to meet her, but he knows of her and her story. And he said his dad was very overprotective of him because of everything that happened to Angie, and including things like he'd want to go out for a bike ride. And he was like telling this as a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And they would, let him go out, but only if his dad could be like right behind. And the neighbors were so nervous because there would be a car slowly driving behind him when he's riding his bike.
Wow.
And they would offer to like call the cops, and he's like, no, that's, it's just my dad. Like, he's just keeping an eye on me. So could you
Most
imagine?
protected kid on the planet right here.
I know, right? It's like he has his own secret service by his dad.
Poor buddy. Oh, poor dad. Oh gosh, Ron Bones.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, it's little things like that make me think, like, I don't think he had anything to do with it, because he got super protective. They kept, and I want to say, I mean, the articles that I was reading were a lot more recent than 1993, because there's been so much traction in this case, within the last 4 years, that there's so many more recent articles. And they still had her like pink bike in a shed because it was like her favorite bike. And,
Oh, no.
yeah. So anyway, just I'm so glad they caught him. So glad. But gosh, awful.
Terrible story.
Yeah.
You know what I too was just thinking, I wasn't just thinking this whenever you were telling the story about how they did the search and his past history and stuff like that. I wonder if he was registered as a sex offender, because he would have had to have been technically, and you would think, given the nature of the crime, that the sex offenders in the area would be like the first people that they would go and talk to. I mean, that's what they do now.
Right. Yes, I agree. It was never mentioned anywhere that he was registered as a sex offender. And
because
so,
it just seems like he was not even on their radar at all, which is odd.
Right. Because he lived so close. I mean, his family was
Exactly.
right down the street. He lived a little further away, so maybe even if he wouldn't pop up on the radar for that area.
I don't know. I think you would check sex offenders within like 30 miles or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah,
the
I don't know.
radius is,
Like,
but
yeah, and I don't know what the radius was back then, like, or how prevalent. That's why I should have looked that up. Like, the sex offender registry was at that time. Like, were they like very adamant about that, or was it something that came a little bit
especially those ones that are for assaults. Like
Right.
he had assaults on his record and had served time, and then violated probation and had served time by this crime. So he would have been on their radar. He would have been somebody that they'd been like, okay, we need to talk to that guy.
Right. Yeah.
Based on his history. So, I guess it's a good example of ways that will come in handy.
Right.
Using the sex offender registry. I mean, I know there's a lot of bad things about it too, but I wish they'd used it in that case. This case.
No kidding. No kidding. Because I feel like they would have had him a long time before this. I mean, I don't know if he would have admitted it and the DNA wouldn't have been able to process, right? But who knows what would have happened if they had him on the radar.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Carolyn, for sending that our way. But terrible.
St. Louis, North Carolina case.
Yeah. I want to say that she said in her email, like she was like around her age, or like she was young during that time too, and remembered hearing that story when she was younger. So, gosh. Anyway.
She was born in 84, so she'd be like 37 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so sad. It's like not far from our ages.
No. Right. Yeah.
And kudos to those cops for doing their job forever.
I know. Because how easily could that have just been like set on a shelf as like a cold case and just gotten like forgotten about and
never been solved? Good gracious. I can't imagine. That's cool. That's at least a cool thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Justice for Angie, man.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for that story. That
Yeah.
awful, horrific, worst person we've ever read about story.
Yeah. I really truly think he is. But,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a hard case.
mhm.
I don't like it.
Mhm.
I like it. I don't like it.
You're just so used to saying that statement. I like that
Right.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn, too, for the suggestion. And thank you guys all for listening. We're happy to be in this new year
Mhm.
and coming at you with these great fun cases. Our case suggestions have been bomb. So good. So please keep those coming. We really love them. We're getting them on email and Instagram and Facebook, and just keep them coming because we really like them. Check out our social media for posts about these stories. We put pictures up and giveaways and coupon codes to our merch or discount codes to our merch and all kinds of stuff. So come check us out. And always remember, the world is scary. People suck. Hide in your closet.